But this time, I cannot fail. Bricks, my old arch enemy.
I thought I was your arch enemy.
I have a life outside of you, Bart.
Well, last year I said we were done with Slenderman movies, and I meant it. At the end I joked about a Rake movie only to discover that it actually existed. But when I went searching even deeper, I found more than I bargained for. I found not one, but two Rake movies. The Rake 2018 and the Raking 2017. It's a good thing the people in 2017 didn't take the Rake's name despite coming first. That was very generous of them. I don't even know where to begin with this. 3 Slenderman movies was one thing. He's a very famous monster and is basically mainstream now, what with the Sony movie, the HBO documentary, and the stabbing. But the Rake is still semi-obscure. The most mainstream coverage I've ever seen of the Rake is some paranormal show on Travel Channel that also showed this unbelievably fake-looking video of a living pteranodon that Captain Disillusion probably wouldn't even dignify with a 2-minute video. Aside from that, the best you'll get for the Rake is EverymanHYBRID, where he's a sort of bee monster, and the only Rake-centric YouTube series I'm aware of, WhisperedFaith. So to clarify, there are more Rake-centric films than YouTube web series. What the shit? And let's be clear, the Raking came out before Sony Man, so it wasn't even trying to ride the coattails of something else mainstream coming out Asylum style. Nope, they were here first. And since they were the first, they're the ones I'm going to be reviewing this Halloween. I originally wanted to do a double feature where I look at both movies in one night, but Halloween crept up on me too fast. I'm sorry guys, it was just too spooky for me. But let's get started. "10 seconds into watching this movie, I had to stop and open my script back up to point this shit out. The logos look so cheap, and the handheld shaky cam establishing shot on this car with those ugly J.J. Abrams tier lens flares looks awful. The cinematography in this movie is incredibly weak, and it's the first thing that jumps out at you. It never gets any better. Alright, so as far as story, we have a couple yelling at each other, lost in the middle of the desert. They run out of gas and continue yelling at each other while their child in the back absorbs all of this for later in his life. As they're stranded, the Rake dashes by and gives the car a couple of love taps. Wait, I'm scared. You can't just have your characters announce how they feel. That makes me feel angry. Apparently, this advanced mind control technique of smacking the hell out of the car convinces the dad to act like a stupid horror movie character and get out of the car to just look around, I guess. Predictably, he gets yanked away, which convinces mom to get out of the car and leave her toddler in the back seat unattended while there's a fucking monster running around. Ain't you never seen Cujo, lady? She gets out of the car and sees a pile of blood that she could have seen if she just moved to the driver's seat. And then get this shit. She tries to get back in the car from the locked back seat after she just got out the front passenger seat. She doesn't even try to get back in that way, and she gets killed too. Right in front of the kid. Fucking brutal. Kid doesn't seem too disturbed by it though. He just seems kind of annoyed. Mom! The Rake then, I fucking assume, uses its psychic powers? I don't know, leave me alone. To unlock the door from the outside to kill the kid, but then the light in the car comes on and scares it off, leaving the kid safe. I guess it's like a worse version of a vampire then. At least vampires can be around light sources that, you know, aren't the sun. The kid waits around the entire fucking night, not screaming or crying or anything. When we see him the next morning, he's getting rescued and he's just kind of staring off, thinking about Pokemon or gummy bears or something. And yeah, that's our intro. Basically the same thing as Always Watching's intro, down to the couple encountering the monster in the car and both dying, except there's a kid involved. I will say I'm pleasantly surprised they didn't kill the kid for shock value. This already puts it above most creepypastas. Roll opening credits. I guess the director is the same guy as the lead actor. We'll have to wait and see if this is more of a Citizen Kane or The Room sort of situation. Also, this opening credits sequence has some pictures in it that may honestly be actual gore pictures. I can't tell, and I'm not showing them here just in case. You'll have to take my word for it. There's also a still of what honestly looks like Slenderman, and if it is, that means even the fucking Rake movie has a higher Slenderman count than Slender. It also has a blatant screenshot from EverymanHYBRID's Rake. What a fucking mess this all is. We cut to an establishing shot of what looks like a college, accompanied by music I may have heard in porn before. Appropriate, as we next have a couple making out super hard and then doing the sex to each other. This goes on for entirely too long, and we learn that this is apparently a teacher's assistant who we'll just call Fred, sleeping with his student. There's a quick cut to show some claw scars on his arm, but it only lasts like half a second. It's completely bizarre editing-wise. Whoever did that scar prosthetic only gets to have it be in the movie for half a second. Why? Also, this scar reveals that this TA banging his student is the little kid from the beginning. So, at least the movie has that up on Always Watching. The beginning sequence means something for the rest of the movie. Their intimate moment gets ruined by goth stereotype, who I'm just gonna call Velma. Apparently Velma and popular girl stereotype, who I'm going to call Daphne, don't get along too well, despite being roommates, and also have a big project due, which Daphne doesn't care about. They meet up at some bar to talk about it along with a total Tismo named Noah, but I'm just gonna call him Shaggy to avoid association with TribeTwelve. Every scene he's in during this part of the movie makes me want him to die first, so I guess he does a good job at acting the part of a complete spurglord.
So what are you drinking? I'm not much of a drinker, but maybe we could each get something and then try them both.
This bartender right here is me in every single scene he speaks in. He wins the Best Character Award.
I think you need something a little stronger. Maybe a gun?
Also, Velma is instantly the most sympathetic main character, as I completely understand the pain of working on a big, important group project with a massive Aspie and people who couldn't care less. Said Aspie also has a crush on her, and it drags out every single scene these two are in. Okay, and then, watch.
I really wish I didn't care about my grades.
Yeah, but then, you know, the way you look would make a lot more sense, and what's interesting about that?
So you like mystery?
More of an onion enthusiast earlier. Layers. I like layers.
Somebody once told me. Man, if you ever manage to pick up a chick with a fucking Shrek line, you are a god. I know a friend of mine with some unlucky experience in that area. They talk about the project painfully, and apparently it's just about doing an essay on some urban legend of your choice. Apparently the Rake is from Joshua Tree National Park, which means this is a Californian story, much to my shame and dismay. It only ever shows up on the equinox, which is not only tomorrow, but Fred's birthday. Ooh. Randomly, Velma's sister Scooby shows up and crowbars herself into the story. The trip begins the next day, I guess to Joshua Tree. It's really slow going getting over there. I mentioned in Sony Man that the pacing was breakneck, but this seems to be leaning more towards Slender. I've got nothing against the slow burn approach, but the characters are so two-dimensional that there doesn't seem to be much to getting to know them.
Are you filming this?
Are you filming?
Sorry, I said I wouldn't make comparisons to something that's actually good. Let's keep going. So Daphne almost gets everyone killed because she wants to pee, which sounds stupid out of context, but it's just as stupid with context, so let's leave it at that. And it turns out that Daphne smuggled Scooby into the trip because, fuck it, we need more conflict, I guess. Shaggy gets some nice wanking material with a short cat fight before a mysterious truck driver shows up to give a sinister warning.
Tonight's not a good night for camping.
Why?
It just isn't.
It's not subtle. They get everything set up that night, and now comes the age-old tradition of college kids getting drunk in the desert. This is how a lot of rattlesnake bites happen, by the way. Also, I've just now noticed that Velma has a Keyblade necklace, so make of that what you will. Fred tells a ghost story, but it was probably just about some guy in a mask who wanted to scare kids off his land to get the hidden treasure, so whatever. After that, we get this brilliant line from Daphne.
Ghost stories make me horny.
I guess that's why she's stuck with Mystery Inc. this whole time. That's her fetish. Then something scratches her back, and neither of them seem to think it might have been the jagged wall they're furiously making out against. But no, it's obviously the Rake. And they head back to the rest of the gang, and again, the makeup on the scars on Daphne's back is only shown for a split second. Not at all like the lingering shots on Lee's festering wounds in Whispered Faith. Shaggy looks around with the night vision on his camera, which again reminds me of some things from some other stuff, and we get our first look at the Rake itself. It looks alright. Not a bad practical effect for such a cheap movie. I've seen worse from higher budget projects, though its fingers look maybe a bit too rubbery and flimsy. It makes him seem unthreatening. Everyone runs back to the truck from a pretty good distance, but they all make it back despite the Rake's incredible speed seen at the beginning. Maybe he was just tired. And of course we have the classic time-honored tradition of the car not starting when something spooky is happening.
It's not turning on! Are you serious?
At this point the movie is just an extreme Cujo. Again. Then the movie realizes that if everyone just stays in the car, nothing bad will happen, so the Rake somehow opens the door with its psychic unlocking powers again, and drags Scooby out into the dark, never to be seen again. It's then that a hero arrives, a man using Germany's finest technology to frighten off the beast, the spooky truck driver from earlier. We've run out of Scooby-Doo characters, so we'll just call him Kenny from now on, because much like Punished Kenny from Season 2 of the Walking Dead game, this guy is the glue holding this mess together. He is honestly great. He takes no one's bullshit and is the smartest person in a group of utter Neanderthals. I love characters like this. Everyone else keeps talking about how they need to go and save Scooby, but no, Kenny is absolutely right. Just stay in the house made out of solid light until the sun comes up and you're good. Movie over. I can't wait for this wonderful bunch of characters to somehow screw this one up. It's like the fucking waterfall in A Quiet Place. Just stay here. There is no benefit to not doing so.
Do you realize your actions have consequences?
When will you learn? When will you learn that your actions have consequences?
Velma is understandably pissed at Daphne for getting her sister killed by dragging her along for what is basically no reason, and goes off to rifle through Kenny's medicine cabinet, which first of all, that's just rude, and second of all, you're trying to kill yourself wrong there. You gotta go down the road, not across the street. Shaggy stops her though, and we get a better look at the Rake as Kenny explains some things about the creature, while Scooby just gets fucking killed. Also, I love this bit where they show Kenny the Rake on film and he just does this. Also, someone really needs to check out the fucking focus on this thing. Then Shaggy tells this really long and drawn out sob story about his dad getting in a drunk driving accident to try and make Velma feel better, and since we're getting insight on his character, that means he's gonna die soon, and you should feel bad. Also, I get that Fred is supposed to be the main character, since he's like the handsome guy in the group, and also the kid from the beginning, so he has some sort of stake in this encounter, but really it feels like Velma or Shaggy have had the majority of the focus. They try to remedy that in this scene, but really it's just Fred telling Daphne a bunch of bullshit about how she's smart and funny and kind. You know, the kind of shit that you tell a girl when you really just think she's hot and can't point to any specifics that you like about her personality. And it's certainly hard for me to swallow considering how easy it was for her to swallow her TA's load to get some good grades.
I see lights!
So the film is running out of conflict since this safe house is way too useful and completely invalidates the fear factor of the monster, and staying in it until dawn is way too easy of an option, so they decide to throw some random tourists outside who of course will need to be saved from the Rake. Okay, who the fuck goes camping at a national park and then parks their car outside of someone's house? Especially at like 3 in the morning. Maybe they think no one is home. You know, cause all the fucking lights are on. The gang splits up and looks for clues. Fred and Shaggy go outside to rescue the tourists, and everyone else stays inside because they don't want to die. They get to the car and find out that whoever was inside is already dead, probably because they couldn't afford to hire any more actors. They get spooked by the Rake but hide out in the car's headlights before deciding to use their phone flashlights to get back to safety. But Shaggy's battery runs out and he gets grabbed, only for our hero Kenny to save him with a flare. Goldblum style, baby. So yeah, nothing of consequence really happened that was entirely pointless. I mean, Shaggy has a scrape on his knee, but he'll be fine, at least until his death scene. Also, I'd like to point out that by this point in the movie, Shaggy is basically a completely different character. He used to be socially retarded, but now he's giving speeches about trying in the face of hopelessness. He's bravely venturing out to save innocents, and he's able to hold a conversation without spilling his spaghetti all over the place. Though he soon returns to form when he, honest to God, blows a fuse by plugging in his phone charger. Not only is this obviously only happening because the movie has completely run itself out of plot and desperately needs to raise the stakes by eliminating the easy thing keeping our characters safe, but if you're telling me that his phone is eating up more power than whatever he unplugged, which could have been anything from a fridge to a microwave to one of Germany's finest light bulbs, of which there's like a fucking ass load, you are taking the piss. Kenny decides to go out and reset the fuse box like the hero he is. Flare in one hand, shotgun in the other. He tries to do this for like 20 seconds, and then, tragically, our hero decides to needlessly sacrifice himself and goes out to fight the Rake while his task is still not done. Why? I seriously don't understand the reasoning here. So yeah, now the power's out, there's no light sources and no gun, and worst of all, no Kenny. Rest in peace, you punished prince. So everyone looks around for light sources, and Shaggy finds a camera, while Daphne finds a flashlight with no battery. The Rake again uses its psychic unlocking powers to get inside the house, and while the camera is stuck trying to get a picture, it lunges at Velma. But Shaggy jumps in and heroically saves her. Before he dies, she gives him a big ol' kiss, and God, it's lame! Velma gets pretty miffed about this random guy she barely knew dying, and so takes the flashlight and just goes to confront the Rake on her own with no weapons. The Rake isn't exactly amused by this, and so throws her effortlessly into the kitchen and snaps her leg like a fucking twig. Yeet. It reminds me of that video I saw where the basketball player broke his fucking leg in half. Except it's like, you know, worse because it's a fake movie. Like in that video, the bone is sticking out and the Rake even grabs onto it and starts yanking it around. They fend it off with the flashlight, but Velma is left to her fate. The Rake sure is polite about letting our remaining characters take a moment to mourn their losses. And now, it's all down to Fred and Daphne. Easily the two least developed and least interesting characters in the entire movie. The sun is coming up, apparently really early considering that it was just 4 AM before Shaggy died, and that was about 5 minutes ago. This is worse than Jojo time, where 5 seconds of frozen time is actually about 2.5 minutes. Fred decides that the best option is to just jump out the window and run for it now that there's sunlight, but the Rake grabs Daphne before she can make her escape. Fred runs back inside to see the Rake holding Daphne like a meat puppet and using her to talk? I remember you. What? Is this a thing? The closest I've seen to this is the Rake actually speaking unintelligibly, but those who are chosen by it can interpret the whispers. Alex and a past Vinny from EMH, and Lee and WhisperedFaith can all hear it speaking. Fred taunts it, telling it to finish what it started, but instead it just shoves its fucking fingers through her throat and kills her. Fred shuts the door on it, which really shouldn't work considering it has super strength and magical unlocking powers, but whatever. The Rake fucks off and gives Fred a chance to grieve his girlfriend, who is at least live enough to close her own eyes, flutter her eyelids, and breathe noticeably. He looks at the gift she gave him for his birthday, and while it does suck that his girlfriend is dead or whatever, he's pretty stoked that he has 2 tickets to a country music concert. Nothing bad ever happens at those. He's about to go out for a night of fun when the Rake just grabs him and kills him. That's it. That's the end of the movie. It's like a fucking comedy all of a sudden. The Rake just grabs him in broad-ass daylight, ignoring all the previously set up rules for an ending that is much more funny than scary. Even the music choice for the end credits is super light-hearted and comedic for what just happened. What a weird choice. The movie hasn't been all that funny for a while, or at least it hasn't tried to be. This was certainly an adventure. I can't say it's what I expected going in, though after it started it became extremely predictable. I thought there would be some production value going here, but nope. From the camera work to the audio to the cast, This all feels like a movie made by a bunch of friends getting together with their camcorder to just have a fun time. But I really don't think that was the case. These are all actual actors who have had real roles. Kenny's IMDb profile shows that he has 65 roles under his belt. With experience like that, it's no wonder he was the best character in the movie. The very existence of this movie is just an anomaly to me. The only thing I can think of is that maybe he was trying to ape off the, I can't even say success, existence of Always Watching. The openings of both movies are extremely similar, which gives me that vibe. But let's talk about my overall feelings on the actual movie. One thing I actually did like is that they gave the Rake a clear set of rules it had to follow, unlike the Slenderman movies. I think they gimped the Rake way too hard if the light from a cell phone's flashlight or the inside of a car is enough to ward it off, and if it can only attack one day out of the year in one national park in one state in the country. But the point is that it's not unstoppable the way Slenderman is in basically all of his movies. Except arguably Always Watching, but that just breaks the rules at the end anyway to have a spooky climax the way this movie does with its last scene. I can tell that they were trying with the characters a lot more than pretty much all of the Slenderman movies, especially Sony Man. However, they all turn out to be fairly two-dimensional, and Scooby gets basically no screen time before she's killed off, so it's hard to care about her especially. She's kind of like Milo in TribeTwelve, where she's just basically used as a plot device to make you care about Velma. Except this doesn't even have Milo's journal, so what's the fucking point? Kenny's death is easily the most contrived and confusing. I have no idea what they were going for here. Velma dies in a blaze of sacrificial glory after losing her sister, but after losing some Spurglord she knew for a day who told her some sob story about his dad. I think the weirdest thing to me in this entire movie is Fred. What is his deal? He's played by the director and is effectively the main character. He's the kid from the beginning, but he gets microscopic amounts of screen time and zero development or any semblance of an arc. The most we ever get out of him is that he loves Daphne or whatever, so her death is essentially guaranteed. So this really isn't a Tommy Wiseau situation where all the focus is on him. I can say a lot about this movie, but I can't say the director is an egomaniac. This was probably a project where they really wound up liking the side characters a lot more than the main one. I guess it turned out for the better, but I'll never know if Fred was gonna be a more substantial character. I can't even say if this is worth watching more than the Slenderman movies. It's certainly the funniest movie we've looked at so far, but there's so much of this movie that's just devoted to silent pauses. In the beginning, this is usually accompanied by Shaggy saying something particularly tismic that makes me want to blow my fucking brains out, but later on, people will just sit around for like 25 seconds, not saying anything, and it feels like padding even more than that fucking tourist scene. The Rake looks okay for what's clearly such a budget movie, but he doesn't really do much until the very end because his weaknesses leave him so vulnerable and crippled. Overall, I'd call it more enjoyable than the Slenderman movies, but only ironically. This is not a good movie, but it can at least be dumb fun at points, and that's more than I can say about most of the Slenderman movies. So that's it for this Halloween. I'm sorry it couldn't be more. My projects are always way more ambitious than they turn out to be. Now that I'm back, we'll actually try to do something fun next time. For the next video, we're finally going to get to that Mario creepypasta, and I have a lot more stuff on the way. Here's the Twitter, here's the Patreon, here's everything. Thanks for sticking around with me, guys. I'm really glad to be back, and I hope you're glad to have me back. See you next time.